As I speak, it's the waning hours of January 2025. May as well be January 1935, Germany. Much the same stuff is happening, and all the initial elements of mass brutality and police state and multiple genocides are being put into place. We already know that something majority of Americans are at best indifferent to, or a plurality, maybe not a majority, I should say a plurality. But, here we are. And, of course, as always, oh, you're overreacting. Oh, don't worry about it. And, there's some people that know they're lying when they say that, and there's some people that are still liars but have lied to themselves, too. And, but the thing that really sticks in my craw, I find, aside from people trying to kill me, is the audacity. Well, one, that so many of these totalitarian, eugenicist, disgusting freaks claim to be Christians. That's funny. That's real funny. That I take a grave exception to that, because, and this is where it ties in. The rationale is always for genocide is saying, oh, these people. Well, there's genocide with regard to those perceived as outsiders, but then with regard to people whose status as Americans can't be denied, it's always, oh, those people are a threat to our traditional way of life. Nothing about these people's way of life is traditional. They're like driving their gas guzzlers to Wendy's and, like looking up porn on their smartphones. Like, yeah, very traditional. Very traditional. But for them to claim that when actually, and they talk about the nefarious queer agenda and all this. When I think about what my agenda is and what I've struggled and plotted and schemed for, well, I've been thinking about my grandfather a lot recently, who was also, my dad to a large degree. And he was someone that had a difficult childhood and got away from it and could have gone down a lot of very dark paths, but long story short, ended up finding a place to get away from his troubled past, finding a place to settle down, meeting a woman he fell in love with, finding a way to make a living that actually made him feel useful and fulfilled and feel like he wasn't wasting his potential, keeping the freedom to be able to walk away if, you felt like you were being asked to cross ethical or personal lines you didn't want to cross on a job, which he did. He walked away from a lucrative job to become a public servant, and became a very respected one, because he was remembered as actually enforcing the law without favor and, actually believing in the principles of equality and civil liberty and all that stuff that the country is supposed to be predicated on. And when I think about what I want, my agenda and the thing that these people have fought tirelessly to keep me from having, to make as difficult as possible, is just the life that my grandfather had. Just to be able to have a home and a community, to be able to settle down with, someone that I love and be safe and be able to contribute and be able to help and protect my neighbors. See, back then people actually knew their neighbors, and now the people that call themselves traditionalists are little wankers living in exurbs and suburbs who don't even know their neighbors' names, and they're hiding in their basements beating off. But in terms of what was actually, they pretend and ape at something they don't even understand. But I was born in the last echoes of the America that these people say they want to go back to, the rural small town America, the Andy Griffith shit. Like, my early childhood is some Andy Griffith shit. And I'm here to tell you, one, that they ain't it, obviously. But two, given the sorts of things, the degree of murderous hatred that they portray to anyone that doesn't, isn't straight enough for them, doesn't conform to all their gender ideology, and doesn't, marry someone, of a different gender who has the right reproductive capacity and produce X number of children that they hate and never talk to and disown freely if they turn out to be gay or whatever. I want to tell y'all who these people really are. And I want to tell y'all how they became the threat to everything good and decent in the world and in this country. And what I will call the fourfold decline of American Christendom that I saw within the scope of my own life. And how does it get to be the generation who are not perfect, or generations, I should say, the silent generation and the so-called greatest generation. And, greatest, maybe a bit much, but there was a lot great about them. And the silent generation even more so. They're the greatest as far as I'm concerned. They were, they're misnamed. They weren't silent. They were silent about themselves. They didn't have a lot of ego, and they didn't carp on about their own struggles, even though they had known terrible struggle. But that's exactly what kept them humble. And they had a lot of trauma, but once you got them talking, boy, did they have a lot to say. I got to be around a lot of older folks when I was little. I was with my grandparents a lot. And so, I got to know a lot of them, and got to hear all the gossip, of course, that comes with being rural, small town, and everyone up in everyone's business. Again, that whole neighborly, actually caring about other people, but also being too judgmental and nosy sometimes, but actually caring. So this is just an introduction, because I have to work on brevity. I mean, time is short. Time is short. But the point being, I really tried. I haven't done something like this before, because up until COVID, and in that period, and when what happened in 2020, I had connections to that third and fourth generation that I'm marking here of Euro-American so-called Christians who are now outright Nazis, and seem determined to sublimate all their own gross moral deficiencies and depravities onto everyone else in the world, and use it as a pretext for murder and torment and inflicting unimaginable suffering on people, because it's all that makes them feel validation or pleasure, and that's all they want. But I tried up until very recently, especially for the people that I knew from childhood. I really tried to talk to them, to listen, to reach out, to try to discuss, how can we live in a society together that respects all of us and affords all of us the same rights, and doesn't try to alter whatever beliefs you want to adhere to, certainly in your church. And it's for example, I don't want to force anyone to get a vaccine, ideally, and in a perfect world, I don't. But at the same time, if you're saying, I remember talking to one of them, and honestly, good faith, trying to figure out okay, if you don't want to get vaccinated, then you have to. It's I am sympathetic to you not wanting to be forced to, and to bodily autonomy, even though I know they don't give a damn about anyone else's bodily autonomy. They have no principles, but like, because I actually do. It's, so I would talk to them like, yeah, so if you weren't vaccinated and, then, you would have, obviously you would have a lot of limitations placed on you. Well, yeah, that's not fair. So let me get this straight. You want the right to give other people measles. Not just to say, I'm not going to inoculate myself, but literally it comes down to them saying, I have the right to have a lethal virus and go spread it around at the airport unconditionally. I have a right to kill you rather than wear a mask. They don't really believe in rights of any. It's just my desires, my will. That's all there is to them. The will to power, the will to truth. That's what makes them Nazis. But what is this transmutation that occurred between that generation which went and fought fascism and was changed by it, and those guys that many of whom were very racist, and many of whom were far right or had whatever preconceptions about this group of people or that group of people, but then it's and it didn't magically transform them into a different person to see the camps, but it had a profound, it tempered them between that and what they grew up in at home. It gave them a notion of restraint and duty and limitation, even if they were white supremacists or extremely patriarchal or whatever have you. It's that sense of constraint and obligation and there's rules to this, all gone now, all gone. And so I want to try to just go step by step through 4 age cohorts and show the decline of, and I'm really, I'm going off my own upbringing and childhood community. I'm primarily focusing on Protestant Christianity, but because that's what I grew up in and that's what I knew mostly. But the other reason is because, and of course, that doesn't. There are a lot of Catholics that are wonderful people. I'm not, it's nothing about individual parishioners and the religion you were born into, but just as a matter of philosophical analysis and historical analysis, there's nothing surprising about the ongoing historical nexus between the Roman Church and fascism. That's natural because it's the church that was created by the Roman Empire. So the OGs, so that makes perfect sense. But given that Protestantism was supposed to be a rebellion against that church and saying, hey, no, this religion has been co-opted and corrupted long enough by the last vestige of the Roman Empire, and we're going to restore it to what it's supposed to be, something akin to the rabbinical tradition of Judaism, and something that is focused not on, ritual and how much money you can raise for the headman, and, that requires personal struggle. And so, and then how to actually, in a practical way, how to live that life and not just set it aside as, something that I go and do XYZ and I say the words and then I'm forgiven and I go back to living an ungodly life. And so Protestantism, it doesn't come naturally. It's actually quite antithetical. Again, if you're just looking at it from the ideology, the philosophy behind it, the theology of it, not that what we have today, not that these people care, these, whatever we want to call them, these minstrels, these drag performers of Christianity who wear giant, 5-foot cross earrings dangling around, smacking them in the face, but don't understand or live or practice the first bit of anything in the gospel. Yeah, I've gone on long enough, but you get where I'm going with this. So I'll go one by one and give you my take as to how do we get to this level of decay and depravity and just like this hollowed out, desecrated skin of Protestantism being worn around by these fascist freaks, these eugenicists, these murderous scumbags who vote for predator and pervert one after another. So how does that happen? I'll try my best to explain.